Welcome to the inaugural episode of SKA Awaaz, Voices That Inspire. My name is Harpreet Kaur and I'll be your host for this initiative, proudly brought to you by the Singapore Khalsa Association. In this podcast series, we aim to spotlight individuals from the Sikh community as well as our friends from both within Singapore and abroad who will share their experiences, professional journeys and contributions to both the Sikh community and the wider society. In this debut episode, we are honored to feature a true pioneer, a trailblazer whose work has left an indelible mark on the Sikh community. He is the visionary behind the founding of a Sikh organization, the establishment of a youth wing, and numerous initiatives that continue to benefit our community and the broader society. Most recently, his contributions have been pivotal to the Singapore Khalsa Association. Please join me in welcoming Mr Hernaikh Singh as we delve into a discussion on youth development, the transformative power of volunteerism, and their crucial roles in building a stronger, more connected community. Mr Hernaikh is the founding president of the Young Sikh Association Singapore, where he empowered Sikh youth and created opportunities for their growth. Under his leadership, YSA became a key institution, launching over 120 initiatives that promoted diversity, volunteerism, and community connections. His involvement with SKA began with the establishment of its youth wing, Young Khalsa, and he later served 3 successful terms as president of the SKA Management Committee. Although he has passed the baton to a new generation of leaders, we are excited to hear from him about his experiences and the enduring impact of his work. Welcome to SKA Awaaz, Mr Hernaikh. Jiayanu, I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Harpreet. I'm really delighted as well as honored to be part of this podcast, and I hope I can do justice to the discussions.
Thank you, Mr Hernaikh. Let's dive right in. Your journey has been truly inspiring, rooted in humility and profound commitment to giving back. With this episode focused on community service and building, perhaps we could begin with something personal. You come from a very simple and humble background. Perhaps you could share a moment with us from your childhood or even your youth where you felt empowered to make a difference or contribute back to society.
Sure. You're right in the sense that, I came from very humble backgrounds. My mom was actually the most important person in my siblings and my life. And I think we got a lot of inspiration from her in terms of how to manage young individuals, how to be able to contribute while managing, a small family. Yeah. My father passed on very early when I was about 7-8 years old. So my mom looked after us and taught us this whole concept of giving back, contributing, looking after one another. Mm-hmm. So as I grew older, I didn't have any specific occasion to say that this is the time to contribute. Sure. It was a natural process. I was part of the Sikh community from the very beginning. I used to spend a lot of time in the Gurdwaras. I made friends with fellow Sikhs and we grew up together. Yeah. We even had a football team under Towner Sikhs. And so if you ask me, it was this coming together with fellow Sikhs that made me realize that this is my community, mm-hmm. and I need to contribute to this community. The one person, perhaps if I could identify as a role model for me would be the late Harwan Singh. Harwan was the manager for Sikh Sevaks football team, and he brought a group of young Sikhs together and said, look, if you don't come together and play football, yeah. you may go awry. Yep. And mix with bad company. So he brought us together and said, look, you need to be together, you need to be united, and this is my way of bringing young Sikhs together and so that they remain focused and they remain united and they remain interested in a particular activity, which was football. Okay. So in a way that ingrained in me the idea that we all can make our differences in various ways. And I think he was a very good role model in that sense because he was strict yet he was loving. So we are thankful to him for creating the individuals that we are. And all of us, the majority of us from that generation, this is like the early 80s,
right,
are still in touch right now, and we are contributing to the Sikh community in our own different ways. So that's how the contribution to the community started. It was a natural progression in a sense.
Fair enough. And I see that football has come along with you a long way as well.
It has, actually. Yes.
I spoke to a few individuals recently, and they had wonderful things to say about you. And one comment that really stood out was how you always manage to find time to contribute, to be there, to turn up. May it be work, community services, formal, informal invites, and I'm sure family gatherings as well. So the magic question, rather the obvious question I would say is, how do you prioritize and manage this streak of giving back to the community?
Thanks for the comments. I mean, these individuals who gave you the comment are really good people.
Yeah.
I mean, they also, I know for a fact that most of my friends and people I've met are really genuine in the way they provide their inputs and their feedback. For me, contributing to the community, whether, and the society, really boils down to priorities. If you feel that something is important, you will be able to make time for it, no matter what your competing priorities are. So in my case, I would argue that, I had a lot of other competing priorities when I started organizations like Young Sikh Association Singapore, Young Khalsa, and even, taking on the responsibility of being part of the management committee at Singapore Khalsa Association. I had many other priorities, but I always felt that, these are things that require my attention.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned just now, the Sikh community is my community.
Yeah.
If I don't support it, I don't contribute to the community, then it's not fair.
Yeah.
It is not fair. I can blame everybody else for the problem the community is going through, the challenges the community is going through, but who is going to solve the problems? Who is going to solve the challenges? And that always comes to my mind. There were always naysayers, in terms of what you do, but you tell yourself that this is where I belong, and if I don't contribute, to this community or to the society, then I'm not being fair. And I need to stand up and be counted. So for me, it's always been an issue of priorities, and I've always found that contributing to the Sikh community is one of my key priorities.
I see. Interesting. Talking about contributions, you've been actively involved with the Singapore Khalsa Association for the past 6 years, and even before that, including playing a key role in forming Young Khalsa at SKA, as well as contributing to the Young Sikh Association. You've often emphasized the importance of youth in community building. What inspired your belief in empowering young people to take on leadership roles?
Now, I'll be very candid about my focus and why I think young Sikhs or the youth are important. When I was part of Singapore Khalsa Association, this was in the early 2000s, I realized that little attention was being given to young Sikhs. There were religious institutions that focus on the spiritual and religious aspects of youth development. But beyond that, the social, intellectual, professional, cultural development of young Sikhs was missing. So a group of young Sikhs decided to come together, and we brainstormed for quite a few months to see whether there was really a need for us to focus on that particular area. And after which, then we decided to form Young Sikh Association Singapore, because we realized there was a gap, a gap that needed to be filled in terms of getting young Sikhs interested in what's happening in the Sikh community and in the larger society. So that's how the focus came about. How do we engage young Sikhs? We have to take this view that the competing engagements or the priorities of young Sikhs now is very different from my time.
Yeah.
When YSA was set up in 2003, I could argue that I was a young Sikh. I had, two very young kids. My daughter was born in 2000, my son in 2002.
Yeah.
And we started YSA in 2003. So I could always say that, look, I had a young family. I started work in 2004 with a new institution, I could have easily said, look, I don't want to get involved. But then I asked myself, if I don't get involved, this area, this gap may never be filled for some time to come. And we felt that particular occasion was opportune for us to start a youth organization. And we were not wrong in our thinking, because I will explain in a while why we felt, very happy with why we set up YSA. In terms of how you get young Sikhs involved, is get them involved in things that they are passionate about.
Sure.
In YSA, we used to have this idea. We reach out to all young Sikhs and say, you have an idea, come to us. We will support it in terms of manpower and funding, but you run the idea. So we had things that were never done in the Sikh community, like a play called Coach.
That's right.
We had a regional Bhangra competition. Then we also had an exhibition on the architecture of the Golden Temple, which was held at the National Library. So these were all spearheaded by young Sikhs, because this was their passion. YSA provided the support. Why I think YSA has become a very successful establishment was one of the mandates that YSA had was to groom young Sikhs to take on leadership positions within and outside the Sikh community. So, if I could name you a few people, we have Satwan Singh, one of the founding members of YSA, who's heading Khalsa Dharamsabha.
That's right.
Malminderjit Singh, who was the second president of YSA, heading Sikh Advisory Board. Sukhbir Singh, who was a vice president at YSA, had headed Central Sikh Temple before. Sarabjit Singh, who was also the former president, being part of the Singapore Sikh Education Foundation, being part of the Sikh Welfare Council. Now you have the younger ones also, like Rashminder, who is part of the Sikh Education Foundation, I believe, and Khalsa Dharamsabha.
That's right.
So the idea was to get these young people, first of all, interested in the Sikh community, the issues and challenges faced by the Sikh community, and then be part of organizations to try and overcome and resolve some of these challenges. So we are very proud that young Sikhs have taken on this mantle to head various organizations or be part of them.
I see. Mr. Hernaikh, I couldn't help but notice that there has been more mention of males in Sikh institute representation wise. Do you see the reason why our females, not to make this an issue, but rather there should be a balance, and how can we fill that gap for the females to come forward?
I agree with you to some extent that the various organizations are dominated by the males, male Sikhs. But it's also not entirely correct to say that the ladies are not involved. I've seen the transition over the years, over the last 3 decades or so. Now you find more ladies being part of Sikh institutions.
Yes.
And beyond that, also setting up their own, entities to represent them. Like you have the Istri Satsang in the various Gurdwaras. In SKA, you have the ladies wing.
That's right.
So, and then of course under Sikh Welfare Council, you have the Suneri Saheliyan. So there is a greater ladies involvement in the Sikh community affairs. In terms of holding leadership position, I think if you look at SKA right now, you have a lady vice president. I don't think so that has happened ever before. And within the Gurdwaras, you also find more ladies taking on responsibility. So there is a shift, but like perhaps, you would share the same view.
Yep.
The shift could be a bit faster, could be a bit more intense, could be more involving. So, but it is not correct to say there is no lady involvement in the various Sikh institutions.
Fair enough. I'd just like to move on a little bit on how you served the nation at one point of time. You had the privilege of serving as the honorary aide-de-camp to 2 presidents of Singapore, the late Mr. Ong Teng Cheong and the late Mr. S.R. Nathan. Could you walk us through that experience?
No, I think it was a wonderful experience because the opportunity to serve 2 presidents, it's a very rare thing. I didn't get selected or I didn't apply for it. It was just because I had done national service and, the government felt that I could actually contribute by becoming an aide-de-camp. And I became an aide-de-camp to the president after, I've served my national service. It was during my reservist that I was appointed.
Sure.
And unfortunately, President Ong Teng Cheong passed away while I was still an aide-de-camp. So President S.R. Nathan was then elected to office. So it's a wonderful opportunity. I think the message that I would like to convey is that, whatever opportunities you get to serve the nation, you should capitalize on them, because at the end of the day, it is about making a difference. It's about representing your community. So when I was an aide-de-camp, people saw me as part of the Sikh community, and this is what the Sikhs are able to contribute to the nation. So for young people, it is probably a misnomer to say that if I am not selected into the highest office in the nation, for example, being a member of parliament, I cannot contribute. That's not correct, because there are various organizations and institutions that would welcome contributions from the Sikh community. I mean, you look at organizations like SINDA, National Youth Council, One People Singapore. There are many organizations like this where contributions are welcome. And I think it's important for us to make that contribution because we represent the Sikh community. But more importantly, we also want them to know what the Sikh community is all about, what our challenges are, what our achievements are, and we become, by participating in this organization, we become the conduit to which the Sikh community is represented at the larger society.
I agree. You were speaking about the Sikh community as a whole. What do you think are the most pressing issues facing our community in Singapore today?
Sure. I think there are a number of challenges, and I'll be very candid about what I'm going to say. I think at the first level, it's about getting the youth involved in various institutions. The landscape is very different now than, say, 30 years ago when someone like me decided to contribute to the community. On the one hand, we had leaders who felt that you needed to really compete for leadership positions. And there were people like us who say, yes, I'm fair enough, I will compete for it. And if I succeed, I will lead. The environment is slightly different now. We still have leaders who feel that you need to compete. But unfortunately, you don't have youth who would say that, look, I will fight for it, because for them they have so many other priorities. For them, I want to contribute.
Yeah.
And if you give me the platform to contribute, don't put obstacles in those platforms. I'm saying this based on my own personal experiences. I've seen this happen. I've spoken to leaders to say that if the youth are coming forward to contribute, help them. Give them money, give them space in your institution, and give them support. Don't interfere.
Yeah.
Guide them. Don't interfere. Don't say that this is how it should be done or this is how it should not be done. Because immediately you put a block between you and the young Sikhs. Support them, and I tell you, they will come forward. They may not be able to contribute in the long term. They may be able to contribute on a project basis. Whatever it is, give them that platform to contribute. So I think that is still lacking in the community, where we provide the opportunities for young Sikhs to come forward and contribute. So that's one. I think the second challenge that I feel it is starting to occur now is this lack of collaboration among Sikh institutions. There at one time it was fairly clear what our roles and responsibilities were as institutions, whether it's the Singapore Sikh Education Foundation, Sikh Welfare Council, Singapore Khalsa Association, or the various Gurdwaras. We all knew our roles and responsibilities. Over time, I think the lines have blurred. But that's all right. This happens in any community. The key point is whether we can collaborate rather than duplicate and cannibalize on each other. I give you some examples. For example, Lodi or Tia.
Sure.
It's Mother's Day, for example. All these are being organized by various institutions, including the Gurdwaras. That's perfectly all right, because we have different constituents and we have different sangat to serve.
Yeah.
why do we need to do different activities to mark this occasion? Why can't we come together and do one event?
Yeah.
In that way, we make sure that we reach out to a large audience. That's one. Secondly, we save money. Otherwise we end up spending our own Sangat money on activities like this. Why can't we come together? Increasingly, we find institutions doing a lot of activities on their own, and I think it's not right. In terms of moving out of the community and looking beyond the Sikh community, the challenges, I've mentioned this many times. I think, our forefathers, our fathers, made a lot of contribution to nation building. Yeah. And they were very visible, in terms of appearances, in terms of being in the right professions, like the armed forces, or being in the civil service where they were seen. So everybody knew who the Sikhs were, how they contributed to nation building. Now the landscape has changed, because the employment path have become more diverse. People are taking alternate routes to success. That's perfectly all right. So, but the onus is on us to continue making our presence felt. I mentioned earlier about contributing to the various institutions at the national level. That would be one area. But beyond that, engaging. I mean, institutions should engage political office holders as frequently as possible, so they know who the Sikhs are, what our contribution to nation building is. Because at the end of the day, we are a minority within a minority. Yes. So we need to be able to punch well above our weight all the time. We cannot slack, because if you say that, the government needs to look after me, at the first level we need to look after ourselves, and we need to make ourselves known. So why am I saying this? And it brings me back to the question of youth involvement. Yeah. We can always argue that I'm very busy, or the leaders or the institutions are not forthcoming. While these may be valid reasons, they're not sufficient for us to say that therefore I don't want to contribute. Yeah. Ultimately, I hope I can inspire people to realize that ultimately this is our community. Yes. A success of the community, the progress of the community will really depend on young Sikhs. Because at the end, as you move forward, we have a lot of potential in the community, but the potential needs to come out. Some years ago, we did a book on 50 Sikhs and their contribution to Singapore as part of Singapore's 50th anniversary. Yeah. Melminderji, the Sikh Advisory Board Chairman, and I are actually contemplating doing another book called 50 Sikhs Below 50. It basically to showcase young Sikhs who have succeeded in life, in terms of their contribution to the nation, in terms of contribution to their profession, in terms of contribution to the community, and to use them as role models to tell everybody we have young Sikhs who can make a difference. Sure. And it is important for these young Sikhs to take on important positions within the community to bring the community forward. Everybody has a part to play.
Yes. I like how you summarized everything, Mr. Hernaikh. And with so much of emphasis on the younger generation, it brings me to my last question of the podcast, which is something that's very close to my heart, and I'm sure many Sikh parents. You are a parent to two very lovely kids, youths actually, and you yourself have been brought up by a stellar figure, your late mom, who fought certain odds in her life. What is something that you have picked up in terms of parenting or being parented that you can share with us?
Sure. I mean, that's a very interesting question. I mean, different generations, the way of parenting is different. Yeah. So my mom's generation was slightly different. My mom, because she was a single parent in a way, was very firm, and we were very afraid of her, and whatever she said something, we would do it. One, because of the fear, but more importantly for the fact that she was looking after us as a single person, and we didn't want to disappoint her in whatever we did. So that was the way we were brought up by my mom. One of the things that my mom did really well was to make sure that the four of us, my sister and my two brothers, older brothers, remain united. She made sure that we were always together, and until the day she passed on, this was very important to her, that you must remain together all the time, no matter what. Yeah. And this is something that we have ingrained in my nieces, nephews, and my children. That no matter what happens, even if among our siblings we quarrel, the 7 of you plus your spouses should always remain together. Parenting today is slightly different. And parenting my time, my bringing up my children is slightly different. But there are some consistencies between early 2000 and even now. I think the first thing is, your children will be what you are.
Yeah.
So you have to be the role model that you want your children to grow up to be. And that means a lot of sacrifices. I'm very sincere. Because, when my kids were growing up, one example I can give you is that we didn't go to the movies for the longest time. Because for 2 reasons. One, if we wanted to go to the movies, we had to bring our children along. We will never leave them at home. Because we want to show them that we care.
Yeah.
But we didn't bring them to the cinema because we didn't want them to be a nuisance to other patrons going to the cinema. So we said, look, we will spend time elsewhere apart from the cinema. And even when we eventually decided to go to the cinemas, we will go for shows that they like.
Right.
So your animated cartoon shows, things that I didn't enjoy, but because my children love those, so I spend time. So the point I'm trying to make is that, one, be the role model that you want your children to grow up. So even like crossing the road, even at the traffic light, there's no traffic, I would not cross because the man is red.
Yeah.
I don't want my son or daughter to turn around and say, Daddy ji, what you did is wrong.
Sure.
So I would stand there until the man turns green, then we cross. No matter if everybody around us is crossing, because they see you and they will do the same thing. So that's very important. So role model.
Yeah.
The second one is, you have to be a friend of your kids when they are very young for them to be a friend of yours when they are older. If you don't spend time with your kids when they are younger, do things with them that they love. So for example, my son loves football. Yeah. So do I. So there's something that's common. But when he was even 5-6 years old, I used to bring him for my football games, introduce him to my friends, and they started to know him. Yeah. Then before the game starts, I will be playing football with him. During the interval, I will be playing football with him. After my friends have packed up, I'll still be playing football with him because then he feels that I'm spending time with him. So things that, and at the end of the day, what happens is because of this relationship that you develop when they are younger, when they're older, they tell you everything. So my kids will always share with me what happened in school, who their friends are, and more importantly, even the friends will come to my place and stay the night. My kids have that much confidence in me that he will feel that I can bring my friends and stay because my friends, are the type of people that my dad will support and approve of. Same with my daughter.
Sure.
So things that, so what happens now is that we have a lot of frank talks. Even to the point is, things like I'll ask them, when are you getting a girlfriend? Mm-hmm. Or when you're getting a boyfriend? These are things I will never be able to discuss with my own parents, or my mom when I was younger. Yeah. But we do that, so a very funny thing, when my son and my daughter sat down one day and my wife was there, my daughter and son asked me this question, Daddy ji, if you were back in the university, what is the one thing that you will do more? I said, date more. and they laugh. I say, no, I'm not telling you to get married, but to date more, to enjoy your life while you can. So even my message to my kids now when they were studying in the university was that don't leave the university and 10 years, 15 years down the road say, all I did in the university was study. Yeah. You must make sure it's a wholesome experience. So we have a lot of these frank discussions.
Truly, Mr. Hernaikh, what you sow is what you reap. Mr. Hernaikh, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us today. We truly appreciate your time and wisdom in discussing such important topics. And I'm sure our listeners will take away a great deal from this conversation. But before we wrap up, Mr. Hernaikh, let's have a fun Punjabi quick fire round because we can't be having a Punjabi platform and not speaking Punjabi. No lengthy sentences, but something very quick. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions, and the first thing that comes to your mind, just shoot. Okay, your favorite Punjabi dish?
Butter chicken.
A Punjabi phrase you use the most?
This is actually the phrase that you used just now. Jaisi karni, waisi barni.
Oh, wow. Okay. Bhangra or Gidda?
Bhangra.
One Punjabi song you never get tired of?
Gurdas Man's songs, always beautiful. Ki Banu Duniya Da.
I totally agree. Okay, this is a bit of a controversial one. Amritsar, Ludhiana or Moga?
Ludhiana.
Oh, okay. Cha or lassi?
Cha, always.
Hockey or kabaddi?
Actually, it's football, but since you give me
I didn't
only
put
two
football.
options, hockey.
Sure. Lastly, a word that defines the Punjabi community in Singapore for you.
I think it's a tenacious, exuberant, determined community which has a lot of potential, not fully capitalized or utilized yet, but has a lot of potential, and our young Sikhs need to play a part in that. I just want to end with one important. You asked me about the phrase in Punjabi, "Jaisi barni, waisi karni."
Yeah.
But I think I have another important anecdote that I want to share.
Sure.
It's probably reflective of what my worldview is, what my whole family's, my wife's worldview is. One day I was quite, down.
Yeah.
And as I was leaving the house, my wife told me, she had narrated an incident and told me I need to help. As I was walking out, she said, "You need to help." And I looked at her and I said, "I help people. Who is going to help me?" She turns around and say, "Waheguru." And that struck me really, and I think that's very true. We all always have this view that I'm helping people, and nobody helps me. But ultimately, there is someone. There will always be someone who will help you. If it's not someone here, it's someone up there. So you must always tell yourself, "I help," without hoping to have someone pat me on the back, but I do it nonetheless because I will eventually be rewarded for my efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Hernaikh. I really agree with what Mrs. Hernaikh said. To all our listeners, thank you once again for joining us on our first episode of SKA Awaaz. Stay tuned for more voices that inspire. Don't forget to subscribe and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube Music.